Welcome to the Beyond the Shore podcast, a place for leaders, dreamers, innovators, and world changers. Or as I like to say, a place for leaders who dream, dreamers who innovate, and innovators who change the world. My name is Kels Johnson, and I am your host. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I think it's going to be an incredible one. It is the third day of February, so happy Black History Month, and that's why we're having the topic of conversation all month be around being African American and Christianity. And I think you're going to want to stick around and catch every episode because I've got some amazing guests that will be joining me throughout this month that I am excited about. Okay, I want to get all the preliminaries out of the way. Number one, if you're new here, welcome and good to see you. I hope that something is said and or done that would change your life. If you are returning, what up, fam? I love you. Thank you so much for supporting us in everything that we do. I need you all to do me a favor. Would you hit the like button for me, as it helps to push our video into the algorithm and it lets YouTube know that you need to show this particular video to more people, and it gets more people listening into the conversation. Number two, if you don't mind, maybe you can even share it with somebody. You can text it, you can tell somebody, you can even tweet them and let them know you should probably tune in to what they're saying over here at the Beyond the Shore podcast. Number three, if you enjoy our content and what we're putting out here at the River Network, you can hit the subscribe button. Our mission here is to share the beauty of the gospel through the lens of humanity. And we believe that our generation is going to be impacted by what we're able to put out into the world from a creative perspective. Speaking of that, as you know, we are a part of the River Network, and they are our main sponsor. This is a River Network original show, but we also have an official sponsor of the Beyond the Shore podcast, and that's our friends over at Mind Journal. And I have a couple of their journals here with me today. Now, the last time I announced about Mind Journal, I only had the journal. And yo, this thing is so dope. I reached out to them after taking a peruse through their website and noticed that they had a whole system of things that helps you to stay focused and to stay on top. Now, what's significant about the Mind Journal and what's different about it is specifically designed with men in mind. As you know, men, we tend to keep a lot of our thoughts in our head, and sometimes we can just bottle things up and we can just suppress and push past things, and it builds up a lot of pressure. My dad used to say this quote. He would say, pressure makes a pipe burst. And how many of you know it is 2023 and we don't have time to just be popping off because we are under pressure. So you need to get this journal so you can at least get the thoughts out of your head and onto paper, and it will allow you to think more clearly. But I told them, listen, I need your whole system. So they sent me these other two books. Now, this book is the planner. And if you are a leader, a dreamer, an innovator, or a world changer, you know that you can do none of that without a plan. I, in fact, heard it said like this, that he who fails to plan can plan to fail. And so you need to go and get the planner so you're up to date and up to speed on everything that you have to accomplish. But here is my favorite. It's the check-in notepad. Now, my brain just tends to go off of the trail sometime. I'm a creative. I'm thinking a lot. I'm planning a lot. I've got a lot of different projects. And having this on my desk to refer back to has been a game changer. It keeps me focused, it keeps me on task, and it keeps me productive, getting done the things that I need to get done. So I'm not just doing busy work, but I'm doing productive and effective work. And because you are here with us at the Beyond the Shore podcast, and because you are our fam, you can head over right now to mindjournal.com and you can get anything in the store. And once you get to the checkout, at the discount little tab, just type in River 10 and you will get a 10% discount off of your entire purchase. So you can do that right now. Well, wait, don't do it now unless you're on the computer and can open up another tab. But you can go to Mind Journal and get your system today. I want you guys to have this, and they've given us a discount code, so go take advantage of it. All right. I'm so excited about today's conversation. It's really just kind of like a brain dump. It's just me just kind of talking through what the past month has been for me from an experience that I had with my wife in Washington, D.C. And I want you to take a listen to it, and I hope you can pull out some nuggets and some principles, and I'll see you once the episode is over. Can I just say that when we finally get to where we're going, move to Atlanta, I need to get a producer. I need to get one, because trying to run all of this by myself is insane. I need a producer. If you're in Atlanta and you want to partner, as it were, to help produce this podcast and maybe some other things that we have going on here at the River, shoot me an email at creative@rivernetwork.tv because I could use your assistance. And even if you're a novice, I've got enough experience to teach you if you're ready to learn. But that's not what today's podcast is about. I just wanted to throw that in there. Okay, so today's podcast episode is more of like a story time. It's me sharing my thoughts. It's me letting you in to where my head has been for the past month now. What's been going on in my mind? What do I see? And of course, it's February. It's Black History Month, and I thought it was befitting to start this conversation now. I wanted to do it at the top of the year, but I was like, I'll wait, I'll save it. So I thought it was befitting to start this conversation now because it is Black History Month, and I've had some time to sit, think, process, and really come to terms with how I feel now. So in January, we were in Washington, D.C., and I want to say it from the top right here. D.C. changed me. Like it revolutionized my thought process and what I'm looking at going into the future. D.C. changed me so much. Let me grab it. I came back home, and in my notebook on, if I'm not mistaken, it was January 9th. January 9th at 1:32 a.m., God gave me a prophetic word because of what I experienced in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to share that prophetic word at the end of the month. So you're not going to want to miss any podcast that we drop this month, because I'm going to be dropping breadcrumbs all throughout, and then you will get the full word at the end of the month. But DC changed me. And you might be saying, Kels, why were you in DC in January? Did you have to preach? Were you just hanging out? Well, I was hanging out. I didn't have to preach. Every year since we've lived in Pennsylvania, we've gone up to Baltimore, over to Baltimore, and we've spent watch night or New Year's Eve at watch night service for Union Church, pastored by our dear friends, Pastor Stephen and Zai Chandler. And maybe you're unchurched, maybe you don't know anything about church, and you're like, what the heck is watch night? Or maybe you do go to church and you've never heard of watch night. That was my wife. My wife had never heard of watch night until she married me. I am a church baby. And to this day, I cannot miss watch night, because since I was a kid, every year for New Year's Eve, we had a New Year's Eve service that we called Watch Night, which is where we started at 10 p.m. and worship and shouted and praised God into the new year. And to this day, right till right now, I feel like the rapture is going to happen every watch. So I got to be at church. You're not about to catch me at the club. Y'all can go to the club. I'm not going to the club because I'm not about to wake up in hell. Okay, let me get back on track. So we did that. We do that every year. And in 2021 was the first time that we ever decided to go to Washington, D.C., because I didn't realize how close D.C. was to Baltimore. I'm from Texas, okay? I don't know much about the Northeast. So I didn't know that they were that close. And the first time we went, we only went like after the service. We didn't even stay. We just went, drove through. Funny part, we actually drove through Washington and by the White House. We actually couldn't even like get close to the White House because they were preparing for January 6th. And when all of that happened, we were just sitting there with our jaws on the floor and agape, like we were just there. Crazy. So that was in 2021. We went back again this year. This time we stayed in DC because I wanted to explore. We wanted to just hang out. We wanted to rest. We had just come off a season of running and moving and transition and just uprooting our lives and doing things. And we were just like, we just need to rest really quick because from here on out, like it's about to be a whirlwind as it relates to our lives. And so we just want to hang out and rest really quick. So we were like, let's just go to DC. And we went to DC with the thoughts and the plans of attending the African American Museum and the Bible Museum, and to see all of the monuments and all of that other good stuff. And so we got to DC on New Year's Day. And when we got to DC, we toured all of the like buildings and stuff. And the first place that we went to was the Washington Monument over by the Washington Mall. And, that thing is massive. Like, I think it's crazy. And we looked over and we saw the Lincoln Monument. We were like, of course we got to go over there. Like, yes. And walking over there, we were like, yo, this is where Martin Luther King said his I Have a Dream speech. It's also where Forrest was running through the water talking about Jenny. And him and Jenny met and hugged. Like, this is the Washington Monument. Like, we're here. As we're walking up the stairs of the Lincoln Memorial, I look down and there is a slab of marbled concrete, and it was like an outline of where Martin Luther King would have been standing in the moment that he was giving the I Have a Dream speech. And in that moment, I placed my 2 feet where he stood, and it was like this weight of realization came upon me of who I am. And I've never had a more identifying experience in my life than standing right there, knowing that this is the place where Martin Luther King would prophesy a dream of what he saw in the future. And I'm looking out and I see people from every race, every nation, every tribe and tongue standing in the breezeway where his words would have been echoing. and I am overwhelmed by this experience. And we schedule to go to the African American Museum. Now, let me pause parenthetically real quick. If you go to Washington, number one, I suggest that you plan to go to Washington. You should. Number two, if you go, you need to go to the African American Museum and the Bible Museum. They are phenomenal. And even just walking to the Washington Monument and going up to the Lincoln Memorial and standing where Martin stood. Like, I've never had an experience like that before in my life because I'm not easily impressed. I go places and I'm not easily impressed by what I'm seeing. It's almost underwhelming. But this experience, this joint, I'm never the same. I'm never the same. Number two, go to the Bible Museum and the African American Museum, but do not, word to the wise, try to do both of them in the same day. Big fail. We tried, and let's just say by the end of it, we were basically running out of one to try to get to the other because they close so early. If anybody from any of the museums ever happened to come across this video, can y'all extend the time, please? It's y'all got too much for us to look at it for y'all to close at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Jeez. But we ended up going to the African American Museum first the next day, right? And we were like, okay, we'll go here, we'll look at everything, and then we'll book it over to the Bible Museum, and all's well that ends well in DC. Boy, were we wrong. We get to the African American Museum, and when you walk in, you walk around the corner, and there's a set of escalators that go up, and then there's another set that goes down. And the set that goes down, I figured, was like a cafeteria because there wasn't one on the main level. And I was like, oh, that's a cafeteria. People could go get food, snacks, cool. We might hit that up if we've got time. But let's get upstairs so we can start seeing stuff. And we get upstairs, and in the first room that we go into, a portion of it was dedicated specifically to Black faith leaders. And in that moment, it was like everything just awakened in me to realize what it means to be Black and what it means to be Christian at the same time. At the very same time. You begin to see how the gospel was used to liberate our people. You begin to see how faith leaders and pastors were maneuvering and moving during their time to ensure that our people had access to a message of hope. And that moment became overwhelming for me because it was like I finally understood who I am and what I'm called to do. If I'm honest, real quick on this podcast, I've never really felt like I had a space within the Black experience. I've lived the Black experience. I've lived the whole thing. But I never really felt like I had a space. Like I never felt like this overwhelming sense of like, I'm proud to be Black. I love being Black. We are some of the most creative people on the face of the planet. I love being Black. We are hilarious. We create from nothing. I love it. But the taking delight and being proud to be Black. I never really had that. I never really had a space in any Black space, white space. Like, I just felt like I've been a nomad. But as you begin to walk through the upper levels of this museum, you begin to see how faith played a very intricate part in how we came to be where we are right now. And so I'm standing in the rooms looking at Rosa Parks' dress, looking at Michael Jackson's notes, looking at artifacts from Prince, looking at things about sports legends of our time. And the more I look, the deeper my love becomes. The more I look, the more gratitude begins to grow inside of me, because I understand who I am and where I come from. Reading about it in a book does not do it justice. Reading history does not do justice. You've got to get in the room. And for me, I saw how the church was a tool to free Black people. That was also the same tool used to enslave Black people. I got to say this. I've got to just say this. This is me just kind of word vomiting right now. But Christianity is not the quote unquote white man's religion. It's not. That's been refuted. That's been disproven so many times we can't even count it at this point. It's not the white man's religion. This gospel was used as a tool to give people hope. Now, we're going through the upper levels of the African American Museum, and then we're getting ready to leave because it's like, oh, we only got a little bit of time to get over to the Bible Museum to check out what they got over there. Long story short, my wife figures out that everything that we just looked at was only the first half, and we were in there for over 2 hours. She figures out that downstairs, where I thought there was just a cafeteria, which there was also the slavery exhibit, where you walk through what slavery was like in that time. And it was just a very immersive experience. And we didn't even get a chance to go into that one because we had to get over to the Bible Museum. And you might be like, well, Kels, why'd you have to get over to the Bible Museum? Because the Bible Museum, we had spent like $50, okay? I couldn't waste $50. So we were like, all right, bet. We go to the Bible Museum. And when we get into the Bible Museum, and I'm gonna try to pull all of my thoughts together here. It was like there was this cataclysmic collision between my faith and my racial identity. In the Bible Museum, you start to see even more in depth how crucial Black church community was in the liberation of Black people. Like, I don't even have time to get into like the standalone base principle of like the faith artifacts that we found and the historic artifacts that we found just about Jesus and the time. Like, I can't even get into that right now because that's a whole theological situation, and we didn't even get a chance to like dig into that because again, it was almost 4 and they were closing. But the little bit that we did get to see, it started to weave the tapestry of how connected the liberation of Black people and the message of the gospel actually were. I tweeted Mr. Roland Martin earlier because I heard him say this quote one time and I couldn't necessarily remember who said it and where it was from. I thought it was Martin Luther King, but I wanted to make sure. So I tweeted him and he so graciously responded to me and told me that it was Martin Luther King. Then he proceeds to send me a screenshot and confirm what he had said. And I want to read this to you because I believe it's important for the conversation. Martin Luther King says this: there are already structured forces in the Negro community that can serve as the basis for building a powerful united front. Number 1, the Negro Church. Number 2, the Negro Press. Number 3, the Negro fraternities and sororities. And number 4, the Negro professional associations. And we must admit that these forces have never given their full resources to the cause of Negro liberation. See, Martin understood the power that the church held in the liberation of Black people. So much so that one of the 4 fundamental institutions that we have to have is the Negro Church, aka the Black church. Like we overcame so much because we had a message of hope to cling to. Martin was not just a political figure. Martin was just not a social justice figure. Martin Luther King Jr. was a prophetic voice. The I Have a Dream speech was not just some speech that he was saying. It was a prophetic announcement and declaration that the liberation of a people was inevitable. That no matter how much we were oppressed, no matter how many barriers you threw up against us, no matter how many walls you tried to keep us behind, you would not be able to do it because there was a prophetic announcement that our liberation was inevitable. Martin was a prophetic voice, and he had a message of hope, and he had a message of change, and he had a message of freedom. And you can only do those things when you've come into a revelation that you have been created in the imago Dei, the image of God. And if you are created in the image of God, your connection to the Creator allows you access to freedom. Jesus says, I come that you might have life and life more abundantly. So Martin knew that if I'm connected to Jesus, life for me is inevitable. So life for Black people was inevitable. And this is why I believe the enemy is trying to attack our generation and strip us away from our faith and push us into social hanging and pull us away from church community and pull us away from a relationship with God. Because as long as we are connected to the source, we are an unstoppable force. I just said something. As long as we are connected to God, we are a people that can be unstoppable. I was listening to the podcast of a friend of mine shortly after we got back from Washington. And in his podcast, he says, because he has his doctorate degree, or he's getting his doctorate degree in theological studies. And he started to say that once you get in the upper echelons of the academia of theological study, you realize that Black people are not there. Black people are not at the table when it comes to theological education at the highest realms. We don't have a lot of Black theologians because, and oh my, when he said this, I literally wanted to punch him in the face. He says largely in part because white people have always placed a value on themselves of education. And they've always placed a value on us as entertainment. That's why majority of the people that carry the wealth in Black culture are entertainers, not educators, not inventors, not people that have something to say in levels of academia, not scientists. The Black wealthy among us are entertainers because that's what we were deemed to be valuable. And the same goes for theological discussions. If we don't teach a generation to value the beauty of the gospel and the study of Scripture, we are going to dismantle everything that was handed to us. Martin's dream was not just a dream that was supposed to stop in 2023. Because whether you believe it or not, we are living in Martin's dream. Martin's dream has now become our reality. As a Black man, there is nothing that I cannot do. There is nothing that I cannot be. There is nothing that I cannot attain. I have access to anything that I want. Will it come unopposed? No. Are there obstacles and barriers and walls that we have to break down? Yes. Do we have to find creative ways while other people are just getting things handed to them? Yes. But by and large, I have the ability to put the work in and create the future that I want to see, especially in the digital age. Especially in the digital age. Having an audience, having access to eyeballs is the commodity of the day. However many eyeballs you have access to, brands will pay you. So you can make a killing as a Black person just by building an audience on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. You can do it. Martin didn't have that. Malcolm didn't have that. Rosa didn't have that. Frederick Douglass, Marcus Garvey, they didn't have all of these things. Mahalia Jackson, who yelled out at Martin standing in at the Lincoln Memorial, tell him about the dream. She didn't have access to put out a cover tune on YouTube and go viral. But we do. So we are living a piece of the reality of Martin's dreams. And his dream was a prophetic announcement. And I think that that's where we have to get back to. I think we as Black people have to recommit to building church communities, building faith communities. When healthy churches are in place, they produce healthy families. Healthy families produce healthy neighborhoods. Healthy neighborhoods produce healthy cities. Healthy cities produce healthy states, and healthy states can produce a healthy nation. We will not get past the evils of the past, the sins of the past, absent from the power of God and the life-transforming power of the gospel. No other thing can do that. No other thing can do that. It is the gospel that turns men's hearts. It is the gospel that brings men to salvation. And I believe that us as Black people have to re-engage faith again. We have to re-engage a relationship with the Father again. We have to put an emphasis on church community, because it's there where we'll be able to pull the strength to forge into the future. I'm committed. I'm committed to being a prophetic voice. I'm committed to ensuring that my generation does not fall by the wayside and yield to the plan of the enemy. If he can get you disconnected from faith, he can disconnect you from hope. And if he can disconnect you from hope, he can keep you anxious. He can keep you depressed. He can keep you worried. He can keep you sad. And he can keep you isolated. And if he can do all of that, he then can enact his 3-step plan: steal, kill, and destroy. But I believe that there is a generation that's rising up that has a hunger for the things of God. I believe there is a generation of African American people that have a desire to see God revealed in our generation. We won't solve social justice issues by simply marching and rioting. We won't solve the sins of our forefathers, the forefathers of this country, by simply just showing up at a march and a rally. They will be solved because a people cried out to God and he heard them. And because he heard them, they were delivered. We attach ourselves back to the Creator. There is nothing that can stop us. I am Martin's dream. You, Martin's dream. We have to do everything in our power protect the dream that he had. And it includes the church. Man, listen, I don't know about you, but I am stirred up. I'm fired up. I am hype about what God is going to do in and through us as a people. I want to make this announcement to you right now that because this is the month of February and it is Black History Month, every single week from here on out, I'm going to dedicate the show to a particular Black faith leader. I'm going to dedicate each episode to a particular Black faith leader. And I'm also inviting some of my faith leading friends onto the podcast as well. Some pastor friends of mine that's doing some incredible work around the country, because I want you to hear their stories and I want you to hear how their lives have been changed because of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And maybe you can take some of that and place it into your journey so you can get back to the roots and the foundations that we've always had as a people. Again, let me announce it one more time. Our friends over at Mind Journal have given us a 10% discount off of our entire purchase at their store. So make sure you go over there and patronize them. We do get a little kickback from that, and that's just their way of saying thank you for getting our books in the hands of men who need it. Listen, I love you guys. I'm excited about the future. God's going to get glory, and we're about to see the collective rising of our people because we've come to a level of spiritual consciousness in Jesus Christ. This has been Beyond the Shore. I'll see you right back here next week. Let's go.